Little MAGA girl kicked out of McDonald's by leftist worker, but a WWII veteran rushes in and says, "Subscribe to the channel right now to find out the end of this epic story and comment below which part of this great America you are watching from." The stale air of Hafraya, Greece, mingled with the cloying scent of soda syrup and the mild acidity of industrial cleaners, hung heavy beneath the cold luminosity of the McDonald's neon tubes. That light, usually seen as inviting and familiar, now appeared harsh and unforgiving, illuminating every detail of the humiliating scene unfolding. Little Lily, 14 years old, barely reached the height of the counter where moments before she had tried to place her order. She was just a girl in a red cap, a simple, innocuous, but now inflammatory Trump cap that had suddenly transformed into a beacon of hate in her hometown's fast food joint, in the heart of the America she loved so much. Her blue eyes, usually full of life and the unwavering faith of a little MAGA girl, were now streaming with tears, running down her rosy cheeks and staining the delicate lace of her Sunday best dress that she had chosen with such care for a patriotic event that ironically had been cancelled due to growing threats of violent protests from activist groups. She was only there to grab a quick bite before heading home, never imagining the restaurant would turn into an ideological battle arena. It was a scene of brutal public humiliation, playing out under the false glow of the golden arches, which seemed to mock her disgrace, transforming the location into a stage for petty intolerance. The suffering she felt wasn't physical, but the piercing pain of censorship, isolation, and public rejection for her deepest, most patriotic beliefs. The inhuman injustice of that ideological attack on a child was palpable. In the center of the chaos, like an ideological demon drawn from a politicized nightmare, stood Kyle, the night manager. A middle-aged man with a skewed name tag and a franchise polo shirt that barely contained his agitated corpulence. He wasn't yelling about a wrong order or a cash register issue. He was vociferating with the blind, destructive fury of a radical leftist, pointing a trembling finger at the girl with an almost maniacal intensity. His voice was loud, rough, laden with frustrations that clearly went far beyond his work routine. The cap, that humble symbol of her American pride and loyalty to the president, was the target of all his wrath. His lips trembled with an almost religious fervor, the ideological hatred flowing freely. "Take it off! Get that oppressive thing out of here! We will not allow fascism on this property. Either you take off that hate propaganda, or you leave, you little agent of supremacy. This place is a safe space, and you're violating that safety with your fascist symbolism. You think you can come in here, flaunting that MAGA hate, and there won't be consequences. We, who stand for social justice, won't be silenced by your intolerance anymore." Kyle's voice was a sharp growl, permeated by the empty, aggressive terms the radical left uses to justify intimidation, censorship, and tyranny against those who disagree. His face was red, distorted by what he saw as a moral crusade, and his bloodshot eyes fixed the Trump girl with an intensity that suggested he viewed her not as a scared, defenseless teenager, but as the embodiment of all the political evils he associated with conservatism and traditional American patriotism. What should have been a place of comfort and childish joy was transformed into a woke Inquisition courtroom, where the First Amendment was being summarily judged, condemned, and publicly executed. Lily clutched her small unicorn backpack, pressing it against her chest like a useless shield, seeking a last vestige of childhood comfort, desperate for anything to separate her from the hostile reality that had descended upon her. The tears were not just from fear, but from a deep, desolate sense of injustice that burned in her young heart. I just came to order a snack," she managed to stammer, her voice choked and almost inaudible, suppressed by the lump in her throat. It's my right. It's freedom of speech. She quoted the words her father, a hard-working, small businessman, had taught her, the pillars of the Republic, but those words seemed to fade in the toxic air of ideological hatred, ineffective against the leftists' irrational fury. The mention of the fundamental American value only made Kyle explode in even greater rage. He stepped back, gesturing widely with his hands. "Rights? You come into a workplace where oppressed people sweat to earn a living and try to remind us of your rights while wearing the symbol of systemic oppression. You have no right to anything, girl. You and your pack of oppressors. Your cap is a symbol of hate and privilege, a constant reminder that people like you are the burden on our society. This isn't your America. This is the America of the people, of social justice. And we are going to clean it of your MAGA poison. Get out of here. Take your MAGA hate somewhere else." The woke villain was using his job authority to enforce his radical doctrine, a dirty, cowardly tactic of cancel culture at its pettiest. The little MAGA girl felt completely abandoned, the weight of the other customers' cowardly silence crushing her. She looked around, her eyes pleading for help, but most people looked away, pretending to focus on their phones or their meals. They feared being the next targets of the manager's ideological rage. The socialist's hypocrisy was glaring. He clamored for a just and tolerant society while practicing the most inhumane injustice against a 14-year-old child. The weight of the system, the passive complicity of the crowd, seemed entirely on the side of the aggressor. Kyle advanced another step, forcing Lily to instinctively retreat, subtly pushing her with his imposing physical presence. He leaned his face close to hers, the smell of stale coffee and ideological rage hanging in the air. "You are leaving now, or I'm taking you out myself. Didn't your parents teach you to respect other people's space? You're a provocateur, a fascist agent provocateur. And the woke community won't allow it. You will be ejected and banned from this location, and let that be a lesson to all you reactionaries who think you can come here exhibiting your ideology of hate." The employee, now visibly ready to use force, aggressively leaned his body toward Lily, and the Trump girl closed her eyes. The cry that escaped her throat was a desperate sob, the pure manifestation of a child being attacked because of her beliefs, a moment of profound vulnerability where the hope for justice seemed to have vanished forever. The ideology of the radical left had taken over the space, transforming the simplicity of a food order into a pitched battle against freedom. The little MAGA girl tried to resist with her childish dignity, holding the cap with both hands, but the villain's fury was overwhelming, and the system seemed to have turned against her. She was being attacked, not for what she did, but for what she dared to be, a patriotic girl. The glass door of McDonald's, with the reflected glare of the golden arches, suddenly swung open, and it was in that precise instant, when the Trump girl's terror was at its peak and expulsion imminent, that the floor seemed to tremble. The sound was not of a commotion, nor of an ordinary customer, but of the firm, measured and unyielding stride of a man who knew authority in his bones. The sound of a cane hitting the tiled floor. "Stop immediately!" The voice was a dry thunder, a military command, strong, guttural and resonant, that sliced through Kyle's yelling like a diamond knife, piercing the hate and fear. The silence that followed was absolute. The silence that followed the newcomer's commanding voice was so heavy one could hear the distant hiss of the milkshake machine and the dry sound of a faucet dripping in the kitchen. Everyone in the restaurant froze, and Kyle himself, the radical leftist, stopped, his finger still pointing at the girl's face, but the rage on his countenance replaced by stupefied confusion and a hint of instinctive fear. That command wasn't just loud, it was authoritative, loaded with the undeniable weight of experience and sacrifice. Entering the scene with the dignity of a flag that was never lowered was the savior. He was an elderly man, but his posture was impeccable, like someone who had spent decades under the oath to defend America and its ideals, wearing an imposing, immaculately pressed khaki dress uniform, studded with colorful metal ribbons that gleamed under the neon lights. He was the very embodiment of American history and honor. On his shoulder, the imposing gold insignia of a Colonel Doe, but the authority he radiated was superior to any rank. This was the WWII veteran, a hero of the greatest generation, a man who had faced real tyranny on the beaches of Normandy and in the jungles of the Pacific, and now faced its petty, cartoonish version in America, disguised as social justice. He leaned on a dark wooden cane with a silver tip, but this didn't diminish his presence. It only added a weight of experience and sacrifice to every slow, determined movement. Colonel Alistair, his true name, didn't seem to be in a hurry. He knew that time, law, and morality were on his side. He took a few slow steps, the rhythmic sound of his cane punctuating the tension in the room. His clear blue eyes, which had probably seen hell and returned, fixed Kyle with a cold, calculated disdain. He didn't even look at Lily yet. His focus was the inhuman injustice and the employees' uncontrolled hatred for everything the nation, symbolized by the little MAGA girl's cap, represented. He positioned himself slightly ahead of Lily, using his decorated body as a shield. "You!" the veteran hissed, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone that carried the weight of history. "Give me your name and your supervisor's number, now." He used a tone of command that allowed no reply, the tone that made young recruits tremble with fear and respect. Kyle, the loudmouth of minutes ago, seemed to have shrunk under the weight of that gaze. His ideological rage struggled against the genuine authority. "Who do you think you are? Old man, I'm the manager. I'm keeping this place safe from your hate. That fascist propaganda has no place here. I have the right to maintain the integrity of my workplace against the operation of hate," he stammered, futilely trying to invoke his failed woke rhetoric. But his words sounded hollow before the military uniform. Colonel Alistair moved with the purposeful slowness of one who knows he has all the time in the world to crush an ant. He slowly extended his arm, and every medal ribbon, from the Kendishkade Purple Heart to the Silver Star, seemed like an irrefutable argument of sacrifice. "I am a man who fought in a global conflict so that this girl would have the right to wear whatever she pleased, even if it was something you hate, in any public place in this country. I fought against the kind of tyranny that tries to silence the voice of defenseless children, against the tyrants who want to impose their ideological doctrine through force and moral intimidation." The colonel took a step forward, forcing Kyle to take an involuntary step back, breaking his aggressive posture. "I saw what happens when ideological fanatics seize power and start telling people what they can or cannot wear, what they can or cannot think. Call it what you want, socialist, woke, leftist, but I call it the playground tyranny. And we defeated it before, and we will defeat it again. You are using your fast food manager badge to attack the First Amendment. You are attacking the heart of this nation." His voice rose back to command volume, echoing off the cold walls. "You are humiliating a little girl in front of everyone because she dared to disagree with your radical doctrine. The only oppressive thing here is your intolerance, your refusal to accept the pluralism that makes America free." The confrontation was decisive. The weight of the WWII veterans. Sacrifice was too much for Kyle's empty, hysterical ideology. The night manager's posture collapsed, paralyzed, his hand falling limply. His attempt at tyranny had been interrupted by an authentic defender of freedom, a man whose authority did not come from a job title, but from a blood oath. Kyle was publicly unmasked, His ideological fury drained away before the palpable honor. Colonel Alistair ignored the defeated manager and turned to Lily. All the severity on his face vanished, replaced by a warm, paternal smile, from a man who knew that, even in the middle of a culture war, innocence must be protected above all. He bent down with difficulty, placing his hand gently on Lily's shoulder, the little MAGA girl. "Colonel Alistair, it's a pleasure to meet you, young patriot," he said, his voice now soft but firm. "There is nothing wrong with that cap. Absolutely nothing. It is a symbol of your hope in your country, a hope for which millions of Americans gave their lives, and don't you let anyone ever take away your right to love and express your support for our nation and our leaders. You have the right to be a Trump girl." Lily, still sobbing, but now with relief, looked up at Colonel Alistair. She saw the medals, the dignity, and felt the warmth of the protection that came from the most unlikely of heroes. It was the touch of America, the real America, the America that protects its children. He told me to take it off, sir," she whispered, referring to the manager. Colonel Alistair gave a comforting pat to her Trump cap. "He is wrong, sweetheart. That man didn't understand the price of freedom. But you do. You are a patriotic girl, and the sacrifice of men like me ensures that you can wear that cap in peace. You are the next generation, and you have the right to carry the torch of our values and our Constitution. I am here, and all the men and women who served are here to defend you from ideological bullies like him." He picked up his cane, raising it slightly, and pointed it at the still shocked employee, who was trying to compose himself. Colonel Alistair, with his imposing posture and his steel gaze, moved the tip of his cane toward Kyle, who staggered behind the counter, his ideological fury completely drained and replaced by cold terror. The leftist seemed to have shrunk under the weight of the WWII Veterans Medal ribbons, unable to sustain his empty rhetoric in the face of the living embodiment of sacrifice for freedom. The silence in the restaurant was now proof of the colonel's moral victory. All eyes, previously averted, were fixed on Kyle, who was now the object of shame. "You will do two things, my friend," the colonel declared, his voice returning to a grave and final tone. "First, you will prepare this young patriot's order, and you will serve it to her free of charge, as minimal compensation for your attempt to violate the First Amendment. Second, and most important, you will call your supervisor, and you will describe word for word the manner in which you attempted to intimidate and expel a 14-year-old child because of her Trump cap. You are not just violating this company's policies, you are violating the spirit of the nation. And you are not talking to just an angry customer, but to the history of this country. And I, Colonel Alistair, will make sure to speak to your supervisor as well." The resolution was instantaneous and complete. Confronted with the threat of being exposed to his management by a decorated war hero, the radical woke collapsed. Kyle, the manager, trembled. He knew the colonel's authority was irrefutable, and that his attempt at ideological tyranny had catastrophically backfired. He stammered an almost inaudible, robotic and humiliating, "Yes, sir," and was forced to retreat to the kitchen to make the order. While Kyle, humbled and defeated, called his supervisor with a choked voice, Colonel Alistair focused entirely on Lily, the little MAGA girl. All the severity on his face vanished, replaced by a warm, paternal smile, which brought Lily a sense of security she hadn't felt since the attack began. He bent down with difficulty, placing his hand gently on Lily's shoulder, ensuring the red cap stayed firmly on her head. "Colonel Alistair, it's a pleasure to meet you, young patriot," he said, his voice soft but firm. "There is nothing wrong with that cap, absolutely nothing. It is a symbol of your hope in your country, a hope for which millions of Americans gave their lives. Your father and mother taught you well. America is a place where you can disagree, where you can wear whatever you want, and where ideological tyrants like that manager have no real power." Lily, still sobbing but now with relief, looked up at Colonel Alastair. She saw the medals, the dignity, and felt the warmth of the protection that came from the most unlikely of heroes, a protection that transcended age and politics. He called me a fascist, sir," she whispered, the words still loaded with venom. Colonel Alastair gave a comforting pat to her. "Trump cap." "He is wrong, sweetheart. That man didn't understand the price of freedom. He only understood the price of his own ideological hate. But you do. You are a patriotic girl. And the sacrifice of men like me who fought in World War II was against real fascism ensures that you can wear that cap in peace. You are the next generation, and you have the right to carry the torch of our values and our Constitution. Remember, the leftists' hate only has power if you let it." The colonel led her to a nearby table, the most central one, and sat down with her, the majesty of his uniform dominating the atmosphere. When Kyle returned, pale and with the order in hand, the colonel intercepted him. "Now, you will apologize to this young lady, on your knees." Kyle hesitated, but a look from the colonel was enough. He stammered a robotic and humiliating apology. The colonel ignored him, focusing on Lily. "Now let's eat. Freedom must be savored, no matter how small the triumph." As Lily ate her snack, Colonel Alastair shared stories of bravery and patriotism, transforming a moment of humiliation into a moment of honor. He not only rescued her physically, but restored her moral conviction, reaffirming that her traditional values were valid and worthy of defense. The little MAGA girl ate her snack with the cap proudly on her head, knowing that, while the ideological hate of the socialist and the woke may be loud and ugly, the strength of tradition, the courage of America's heroes, and the sacrifice of the greatest generation will always, always triumph. Justice and traditional values prevailed. Lily's smile, now tear-free, was the final proof that honor, patriotism, and decency won. The WWII veteran was the guardian who ensured that the flame of free expression would never be extinguished by the fire of ideological hate, and the Trump girl was rescued, reaffirming America's victory over those who seek to divide it.